We are now recording. This is the Python Core Devs and Student Council AMA, and just gonna wait for a few more people to join. How's the sprint so far?
Not as good as in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Better than
I like,
now.
I like that we have people that I wouldn't ordinarily meet because they're in different places in the world. Though that's cool.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
able to have like I think 50 or so, more than 40 people in this sprint. I don't know what's the limit usually for the in-person sprint.
Yeah, I enjoyed seeing new faces or finally matching up faces with old names. I also got some good time discussing various geeky topics with a small number of people that otherwise probably just wouldn't have been online at the same time. So yeah, it's definitely not the same, but it's it's better than I had feared. I went in with pretty low expectations, but it's been pretty good. And exhausting.
If we can get a live performance from Barry, then I think that'll make the whole thing better.
Yeah, Barry?
I could see he wanted to play.
Is Barry here? I didn't see him yet. For me, I wish I had just stay in a hotel for a week instead of like distracting between the sprint and family.
I found that when I was coordinating the one 2 years ago at Microsoft, it's really not the same when you're staying at home. And I don't have family running around, but it's very different to go home at the end of each day when everyone else is going to a hotel and normally you would be. It's like I was this close. I couldn't get budget for it. Work wouldn't cover me a hotel in Redmond.
I can confirm that from the London one. Like
Yeah.
the same experience.
And it was the same for me when it was at Facebook the first 2 years.
Yeah. And it's Pablo's magic, man.
You see that? Those are card decks.
Oh,
Yeah, all of those.
Oh, that's cool. I think we have to have a release manager magic show.
Right.
It'd be so cool.
Okay.
Releasing is the magic show.
There you go, Steve.
Maybe if we're still doing this next year, Marietta, you and I should go to a hotel in downtown Vancouver.
I just made one release, but it really
Sure.
felt like magic, like very confusing magic.
Yeah, it is.
We'll just wait until the next release when we rename half the files and really break everyone.
You mean the underscore?
Well, underscores somewhere, dots somewhere.
I'm pretty sure the 310 will break already people that are doing dubious comparisons.
We're just making people check their assumptions, that's all.
And because we're evil.
Hi.
So I started a doc here, if we can take notes together. Okay, let's see what time. Hold on 1 second. Telling my kids to go to school. Okay, we got 27 people. How many are we expecting? 20, yes.
Does Greg's bicycle count?
No, I'm walking.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Post office opened at 9. I had stuff to drop off, so hey. Do it.
Oh, okay. Should we get started then? It's 9:05. Okay, as a reminder, this call is being recorded. I will upload it to the Google Drive once it's done.
Will
yeah.
this document be shared externally or just internally?
This is just internally for us.
Thank you.
This is just between whoever has whoever registered for the sprint. So not even all core devs will have this. Yeah, I only have a few rules. Let's follow the virtual Pac-Man rule. I want to make sure everybody who joined here actually get to say or participate or ask questions. There is no wrong answers. There is no stupid questions. Those are my 3 rules. Oh, one more. We do have the PSF's code of conduct and it will be enforced. Yeah, for me, the purpose of this is just for us to set aside this time to actually talk and have a dialogue, maybe about the governance. We do have the election coming up next month, I think next month or December, I don't know. But I just wanna chat, and if anybody has questions about it. So that's all from me. Does anybody wanna start or have questions?
Thank you all for coming. See you. No, I'm kidding.
I have one question if nobody has anything before. So what happened with that survey that the Steering Council sent back in the day regarding our opinion about having someone paid by the PSF? There were a bunch of questions, but I remember that there was this survey, and I mean, I suppose because a lot of things happen, I'm aware of that. But if you want to comment something on the status of that.
People had opinions. Basically, I mean, it was a while ago. This is pre-pandemic, right? So it's ancient history at this point. But if people, other Steering Council members can try to correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember correctly, people in general were okay with the questions regarding hiring people to help with the backlog. The key concern from some people was basically, don't steal all the fun bits. Try to keep it on the boring bits if we hire people. And that means basically that's the summary, was people seem in general cautiously okay with the idea, but we're very concerned that some were that we would let them do things that they found enjoyable and thus take away their enjoyment of contributing, and this more or less feel sidelined because there was nothing left for them to want to work on. That was basically it. So, and the plans for actually paying for people to help with the PRQ and all that stuff was put on hold because we had to make sure the PSF itself was in a good financial position to begin with, because last thing we needed was to try to divert funds from just keeping the PSF afloat due to PyCon US 2020 being sidelined like it was. Once that got established, we've made a application to the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. I should say the not us directly, it was actually through the hard work of the grants working group that did the application for us on our behalf, so thanks to them. We're waiting to hear back on that application, I believe next month. If that happens, then great, we've got some funding to try this out. Mainly to hopefully fix the PRQ, help with any automation we need done by whatever the workflow working group comes up with, probably especially around the GitHub transition that Ezio is leading. If that doesn't happen, and then hopefully some R&D, the kind of long-term thinking stuff. If that doesn't work, then we'll probably try to do a fund drive around this idea to try to see if we can get funding from people to actually hire people. That's the status.
Yeah, I don't have really anything to add. That's a pretty good summary, I think.
Yeah, I think Brett's summary is good. I just want folks to know we spent probably 1.5 to 2 meetings discussing the survey. So it's influenced a lot of our thoughts and decision making as we went into the pandemic. And so I want to reassure people that we heard what you were saying. And it was actually valuable feedback. So for that, I thank all of you.
So if no other questions, I do have a question or a
I have
concern.
I have a question if at some point. So I'd like to ask the current steering council members, who, if they're willing to, what is your thoughts about your experience with the steering council? Do you think it's working well? Do you think your fellow council members are crazy or no?
And there's only 3/5 of us here, so we could totally screw the
Oh,
other
okay.
two.
Sounds good. No, but you get the idea. I mean, what's your take on things so far? And if you had the opportunity, what would you improve or what would you change? Thanks.
Who wants to go first?
I can. I don't care. Carol, did you want to go first specifically?
From the standpoint of, I've been involved in a lot of governance organizations, and I would say the steering council has been towards the top in terms of sticking to the agenda and being thoughtful and, collaborative in how things are working. We've been meeting, for those that aren't aware, we meet weekly for an hour and have a set agenda before we meet. And Eva very helpfully takes minutes and that in general, I think it's working quite well. I think if there's anything that I take away from it is I'm amazed that Guido was able to do this function as a single person for as long as he had been, because it's a lot of work even amongst 5 people. So, but I think it's a good thing. And I think each year it's going to improve, much like the PSF has improved over time.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say too, is like, a couple of us have been on the steering council since its inception. And there was a lot of things that like the governance PEPs didn't really cover, right? So we really kind of had to figure out the process for a number of things. And I mean, I couldn't be more happy to work with both the first year of steering council members and this year of steering council members. I think everybody is doing this, for the right reasons, because we love Python and we love the Python community. And, this year, I would say it's been kind of tough emotionally because there have been some really difficult, not the fun part of doing Python stuff, right? Like the fun part is talking about the PEPs and debating, whether those are right for Python or not, or need changes, or working with the PEP authors. Like those are all the things that you kind of want to do when you sign up, but you have to do the not so fun parts as well. And figuring out a process that respects everybody involved, has been one of the things that the steering council has done. And I'm really proud of the current group of people for figuring out the right balance, or a balance for how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Carol and Barry did a good job summarizing what I probably would have said. This year, yeah, as Barry said, it's been a bit stressful, just emotionally draining a bit at times, for obvious reasons I think we all are aware of. And me personally, and probably Carol as well, because we're also in the conduct working group, so we had to hear both ends, and I mean, abstain appropriately on the conduct working group side so that we could handle it appropriately on the steering council side, but also other separate conduct stuff as well. So we get to hear it all. I'd like to think it's working well. I kind of view the steering council as kind of the backstop to the project, that basically if all of you were to quit tomorrow, we would be around to hopefully get the project going again, which hopefully please don't all quit tomorrow. And after that, it's mainly just doing what we can to help just see gaps where we see them, or just, as we said, deal with whatever you all bring up to us to help just keep the project running. I mean, honestly, Ned, I would turn around to you and say, how do you think it's going? I mean, obviously with us kind of at the top position of that stopgap, we see what gets brought up to us, but I don't know, we don't get a lot of feedback from other people. I mean, thank you, by the way, to everyone who, all the conduct stuff, reached out to us either as a steering council or any of the individual members for saying that you appreciated the job we were doing and understanding what we were going through and dealing with. But much like management, which I know part of both professionally and in Python because of this, feedback doesn't come up the chain very easily and often. So we don't hear from a lot of you what you think of our job. Like, do you think the steering council is working out? Do you think us as steering council members are doing a good job? It's one of those, when there's a problem, we hear about it, or if you have an ask of us, we hear about it, but we never get the unsolicited feedback of good job, or could you potentially change this? So I'll actually turn back on you, Ned. How do you think we're doing as a steering council?
Thanks. Thanks for your replies. I agree pretty much with your assessments. I mean, I think my impression is things are going really well, better than might be expected. I guess I was very proud of how we as a community met the challenge of coming up with a governance, kind of from scratch. And I think I don't know for sure all of Guido's motivations for doing it, but I think in a lot of ways he did it the right way. Just kind of forced the community to come up with things, and I think all in all that worked out really well. And I also want to specifically thank all of you for dealing with some of the nasty, more unpleasant stuff. I know that those kinds of things are definitely not easy, but they also very much need to be done. And I think, I think enough said on that right now. One thing though that does come to mind right now is I think that as time has gone on, particularly in the second year of the council, that I don't think we're getting quite as much communication as we did in the first year, like minutes and things like that. So I think that's something that maybe, and I know that's no fun for anybody, but I think that might help a little bit if we could have a little bit more visible feedback on stuff. But other than that, thank you all.
I definitely think, thanks, Ned. I think that's something that we should be more conscious of and try to get better. I think we were, I think you're right that the first year we were better at communicating what the steering council does. In a lot of ways, the conduct issues that we've had to deal with consumed a lot of our time, and obviously that's really hard to communicate. But hopefully those are resolved one way or another for now. So I think we should be very conscious and deliberate about being better at communicating what we're doing. Thanks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, I think comparing the first term to the second term, there's been so much more burnout factor, not necessarily with Python, but with life in general and other commitments, like commitments that you thought would only take a few hours then became 10 hours or 20 hours. And so it's something that now that you've said it, we would definitely, be a lot better about it going forward, and be more intentional about it. As for pulling the governance together, thank you for that. in contrast, the Jupiter community has been working on a new governance. The work group there has been working on a new governance for the last year and a half. And the fact it's been a lot less effective than what we did as a steering council or as a core development group in general. So folks, everyone should be really proud of the fact that we pulled together and created a governance that by and large feels like it's working.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the lack of communication out it's an accident. It's not an excuse per se. I just want to let people know we were not purposely not sending stuff out. It's just literally just slipped our minds. We've just, as Carol said, been consumed with some things that really just took way more time than we were expecting, both in the council and honestly just personal lives and everything going on. I will say that someone did bring this up on our public repo, github.com/python/steering-council, for those who don't know. And it's actually on our agenda for our Monday meeting to discuss. So it's actually been brought up and we're going to be discussing it. I might, at worst, probably create a GitHub action in that in our private repo that will just open an issue to once a month to just say, send out notes or something. We'll have to talk with Eva because thanks to her heroic efforts of taking our crazy notes of what we talk about, she's the one that scrubs them for public consumption and sends them out. So we'll have a chat as a group with her in our next meeting probably and figure out what we can do to try to keep that from just falling off the radar.
Which, thank you, Brett. Which, by the way, I think it may not be widely known that Eva attends our meetings, and I tell you, I don't think we could do what we do without her help. She is absolutely fantastic. So I just want to give a shout out. I mean, you all know she does a lot for Python, and she really helps the steering council in immeasurable ways. So thanks to Eva.
Representing the PSF and getting funding things and personnel things as we look at project managers for the GitHub issues stuff. She's just been instrumental, and I can't thank her enough for offering and being there every week.
Yeah, everything they said. Yes, thank you, Eva.
Okay, should we go to the next question? Christian raises his hand.
Hi. So you already touched a bit on the topic. So how's the steering council doing mentally and stress level wise? I know that especially the last couple of months with the two major incidents we had around the code of conduct with Stefan Kra and Gianpaolo was very stressful for the whole steering council. And so how are you doing, and what could we as a core developer community do to reduce the stress level both on the steering council and the rest of the team? Because I'm partly stressed out by both stuff going on there. I know how some people in the core developer team are doing, and they're not doing well. They're really worrisome, especially one person you probably know. And so how can we do to make sure that we don't burn out people?
So first of all, thank you for asking how we're doing. That's appreciated. You are right. It's been rather stressful since beginning of June, end of June, beginning of July, up until earlier this month, honestly. I'm actually still not on Twitter because I'm still doing with other conduct stuff. But mentally, I'll say I'm doing okay. But yeah, it was not, I don't want to say touch and go, but it was definitely not let's see what happens today kind of thing for a while. I'm doing fine now. Just what we can do for what the overall team can do for us, and what we would like the overall team, I would like to say for the overall team overall is honestly, everyone just be nice to each other. Like I've said this multiple times publicly, and I feel like I'm teaching lessons from kindergarten, but I think we all sometimes just forget that honestly, we're all just human beings just trying to help out on this project that literally who just honestly, we just push out bits to the world that some people just seem to happen to really love, which is great. But I think in the end, the real core thing here is the core team and the people involved. It is the people when it comes down to it, right? Like, I mean, I know I'm somewhat known for my quote, I came from language but stayed for the community. I think that's true for a lot of us, right? Once you reach this stage of being a core developer, you've kind of put in the effort, and the language drawing you in is kind of already done its work, and now it's the people that typically keep you around. And I think we all lose sight of this when we make requests to people or say things, or just don't stop and step back and really think about and realize that you're talking to these people that you've met at PyCon, or maybe you haven't just because you haven't been able to attend, or hopefully you've met them in these virtual sprints this year. But honestly, just please take the time to think before you send that email or leave that comment on GitHub or anything. And that would honestly, I think, smooth so much out in our lives that would solve a vast amount of problems. Because after that, everything's technical and ain't life critical. We're not saving lives. And honestly, we have a year to fix bugs if it is going to impact someone's life because we have a bug going out. So there's no need to rush. And honestly, that is my biggest ask of everyone here, is just take a deep breath if you're upset, step back, come back. Nothing needs to be resolved within a day or a week or honestly even a month. Just try to be nice to each other. That's literally all I ask.
Yeah, and totally agree, Brett. I think the other thing is, and I see this in at work and in my personal life, you know, like this is not normal times, right? Everything that's going on in the world affects people differently, and you know, we're all feeling stress just in, you know, getting through the day. And it's so tempting to allow that stress to invade your communications amongst your fellow Python developers. And I think that sort of taking a moment, taking a breath, and understanding that we're all struggling with, you know, what's going on in the world. Just taking that moment before you hit send, right? Like, is my tone okay? You know, am I allowing the frustration and stress that I'm feeling, is that boiling through into a particular conversation online where you don't have any of the visual, you know, normal human cues, right? We're just writing words. So take that moment and take that breath before you hit send, and just, you know, try to put yourself in the recipient's shoes for a moment.
From one startup to another, and the first startup really burnt me out because of some personnel type stuff, and you know, needed to take a step back, or at least reduce my commitment at some point this year. And that was hard, but it was the best thing for me. And I think we are in strange times, and you know, I encourage every one of you to take care of yourself first. You know, Python is an amazing language, even if it were to freeze right now in time. And sacrificing yourself is not worth incremental improvement. Come back to it when you're feeling strong or able. You know, definitely ask for help if you need help. There's no shame in that. You know, taking care of yourselves is just really critical. And you know, in terms of the steering council as a whole, I think we've really tried to be respectful with each other, even if we disagreed violently. We tried to do it in a way that was thoughtful, and stick more to the issue than the personalities who we're dealing with. And I think that has made us stronger and better in the long run. So keep taking care of yourselves, because you guys are all fantastic.
Okay, maybe we can go to the next question. I see Brent has a question. Brent, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it was basically how satisfied are you with the number of members on the steering council currently? Like, do you think it could benefit from growing or shrinking? And if so, by how much?
I honestly think the 5 works out really well. It's enough to make sure we never have quorum problems at meetings, and it also is enough so that if someone has to take time out for personal reasons, there's enough of the rest of us to be able to step in and take care of things, and it still doesn't run into problems with the way PEP 13 is written. But it's also small enough that coordination's not difficult. Like if we have to track someone down to get an answer on something, because even if we do have the required number of votes on something, we still make sure everyone has their voices heard and recorded and people get their chance to say something. So our 5 count seems to work really well, because if someone doesn't respond, it's easy enough to track that one person down. If it got bigger, I think it'd be a bit harder to track that extra next person not be around. So yeah, I think it's actually worked out really well. It seems to be just the right size for getting the variety that we want in things, but also being small enough that it's easy to coordinate and get things done.
Yeah, again, I totally agree. I think the other thing that I really like about the size is that it's big enough to have a diversity of opinions, which I think is really important in a well-functioning team, to be able to have people who see different sides and have different opinions, but it's also small enough that we can, respectfully discuss those differences of opinions and come to a mutual decision. I can't think of a decision where we haven't been aligned, even if it's sort of like, 4 and 1 abstention or something like that. But I don't think there's been a case where we haven't been able to come together in a meeting of the minds. So I think the size is really great. Smaller probably wouldn't give you that diversity that you need, and larger, as Brett says, would be much more difficult to coordinate.
Also, there are not that many active Python core developers. So if you go to 7, then you have like 10%, 12%, 50% of the whole population just doing the government, and it's just
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, 5 has worked really well. If anything, Brant, like over time, if the developer population were to grow, I think 7 would be nice. I'm on another steering council with 17 people, and it's really, it's not effective. The one concern I have, and this is really a personal thing, is, I've really enjoyed the impact that the group has made, and I enjoy this. There's trade-offs in life that you forego by doing this. And, I've thought about, and I've mentioned to a couple people, I may step down for the next round. But part of me feels guilty doing that, because there's a part of me that feels like I represent the voices of some of the more diverse folks within the core development team. It's just, would making the council larger fix that? Probably not. But, if anybody is interested in running this cycle, please come talk to me. I'd be happy to give you an honest assessment of sort of what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. And I believe Brett and I both have blog posts from last term out there that sort of walks through some of that as well. But yeah, it's a great question.
And to kind of touch on Christian's side comment about losing time, I think Carol and I have both said this public in our blog post. It's about 5 hours a week, which, like, if you're able to give up about 10 hours, that's half your time. So there is a sacrifice. Like, I don't get to code on CPython or anything as much as possible. A lot of my time is spent with that, and then PEP stuff on the packaging side right now. So it is a shift. I mean, it is semi-management at that point. So you have to be ready and willing to make that shift if you want to do this. I'm not saying it's not worth it. It's just you have to decide if that's something you'd like to spend your free time on.
Great, thanks for your answers.
Okay, so I have follow-up questions related to the COC, recent COC events. I don't know if it's a question actually. There are some instances where I don't feel the mailing list are moderating the mailing list. Like I feel like sometimes it's the moderator maybe could have stopped some conversations before they go further. I don't know if there's something we can do about it, or has the steering council has.
I think the thing to do is to, for more people to volunteer to be moderators of the mailing lists. I think a lot of the mailing lists probably don't have that many moderators, and they're probably also very busy. So I'm sure they may not. Well, I would say they may not be actively participating until a problem comes up. So more volunteers is always going to help.
Most of the moderators explicitly said they're just there to stop blatant spam and let the discussions happen on the list. So if you want to actively control the discussion via moderators, someone will have to come up with a guide of what moderators are allowed to pass through and what they need to hold up.
I think moderator is not a spam blocker. Moderator, you're actively, I don't know.
So what I'll say to that is actually historically there have been considered more admins and moderators. So for instance, I'm one of two admins on Ideas, which is probably one of the biggest ones people here participate on. And there's just too much volume for Titus and I to watch. And honestly, I've been unsubscribed from Ideas for about 2 months due to work commitment. So I don't have the bandwidth to monitor it. I need people to come to me as an admin or moderator. I mean, I just consider myself an owner of the list, and tell Titus and I, for instance, this has happened, because I just can't watch it. I just literally do not have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So
like if you're trying to watch it, it's basically on call.
Yeah, exactly. And I have had that, like when the stuff happened in late June, early July, I actually got that email on a Sunday while I was at my in-laws for dinner. And I had to start emailing around trying to shut the mailing lists down as appropriate to calm things down, right? So it is almost like being on call, and it's already such a time suck that actively moderating is just never been the position people who own the main list have taken traditionally, and honestly just don't have the volume. Now, if more people want to step forward and be more active, that's a possibility, but historically the lists have been set up in such a way that it's meant to be more of a proactive push issues up instead of a pull from a ownership perspective. So I think that's why you're seeing the things work the way you see them, Marietta, is just because honestly, historically, in the community at least, main lists were never structured that way, and the volume typically just doesn't afford it, because like I think Dev has maybe 1, maybe 2 active admins. Once again, just don't have the bandwidth. Committers is pretty good because it's closed, and I try to do what I can, but like Ideas, for instance, I literally just can't watch it. It's just too big. So I mean, if people want to somehow figure out a way to make that work better, that's great. But this is how we've ended up in this position, the way it operates today.
So if we wanna see change in how things are moderated, what are the next steps? Okay, Carol, go ahead.
I actually have some comments. I've been in tech for many, many, many years, and I'm not convinced that adding moderators or adding admins change a lot, because you're going in with the assumption then that people are entitled to post offensive comments and it's far more effective if individuals learn to self-regulate, and the group as a whole determines what standards of communication are they willing to accept. And I think, personal attacks, things like that, don't do anything to move the Python language forward. And I think if the goal is to move the Python language forward, the conversations should be around that. Now, there's always going to be stuff that falls through the cracks, but you know, I'm thankful for the folks that are doing moderation. I'm thankful that there's discourse because it has different moderation tools. But I mean, I want folks to be really clear that some of the particularly negative attacks, and I'm not saying that it was core developers, can be very hurtful to certain members of our core team, and to the point where they may choose to leave, which I think is really unfortunate. And it's not necessary. So, you know, think before you type.
Just if I can make a tiny comment, I think for Python dev, I think I recall Tim Peters saying he was retired and happy to be doing the moderation there, and that he doesn't have any bandwidth problems reviewing everything. But I think definitely ideas is probably a much bigger issue or like much higher bandwidth required.
I will say for Dev, Tim has also said that he doesn't feel like he's in a position to censor because he doesn't have guidelines to follow. And so he feels like he's personally making judgment calls. So he does not feel comfortable to do anything unless something gets flagged to him, in which case he'd probably bring it to the steering council. So once again, it's a little tricky because Tim does have the bandwidth to deal with the spam, but he also doesn't feel like he's in a position to necessarily tell people to stop. So I mean, I've said this publicly. I am personally full-on Discourse supporter because of the reporting tools, like having everyone able to flag emails quickly and easily. I think makes it easier to communicate up as a group what they do and don't support, and then admins can, as a whole, handle it. I mean, I've honestly contemplated a couple times no longer administering mailing lists because it's a bit stressful that way, having to be the one point of contact for these kind of things. And Ideas has had its bumps. But yeah, I don't know if we have a great solution. As Carol said, more moderators to actively do things, I don't know necessarily works as well. It helps a lot, honestly, when people on the list call out people on their own to say like, hey, maybe that wasn't so nice, and just help out that way. Like, it doesn't have to be an official word from someone. I think if the group as a whole shows that they, as a community, don't agree with that tone, that helps a lot. Now, by the way, that means replying to that tone nicely and not rising to the tone that you're replying to, because that is a whole nother problem that I think a lot of people have, is once again, take a step back and trying to keep it moderate, at a moderate tone and level and respectful. But I personally, I mean, I try to do that personally where I can. And also I've seen it done. And I think it helps when people say, oh, it's not just one person, it's 2 or 3 people have all said like, yeah, okay, maybe that's not the right tone to be taking.
I guess I still think we need, I think the status quo is not good enough. I would like to see if we, maybe the next steps, perhaps we come up with moderation guidelines. Like, do we need a work group for that?
Is it even technically possible to moderate all of Python dev? So I vaguely remember that there are issues moderating when messages are coming through an NTP gateway or through the Google email list system.
I think we have a little possibly miscommunication on what it means to moderate at times. You kind of need to define what that is, because moderate can mean things like proactively prevent posts from going in until they've been approved. I don't think any of us are talking about that because it's just not humanly possible. You know, a tactic we've taken at work as our work, you know, since I work at Google, has grown huge, for moderating mailing lists there, if basically we're big enough that we have all these problems on internal mailing lists, is, we call it community moderation, but it's very much kind of like what Brett was referring to, where you have people who can do moderation, but they're not sitting there reading everything, trying to do it. They're just the people tapped when issues arise. And you need to be able to have multiple people such that they can respond. It's just, it can't be their job to proactively seek it out and always be available, like as a single person to do it. So it's a time commitment no matter what. That's just the real thing.
I agree with Greg. And on a personal note, I only read the mailing list in digest mode. Committers is the only one that I have that comes through as individual messages. As I just found that I enjoyed reading the bug tracker and the comments on GitHub more than I enjoyed, and to some degree on Discourse, than I enjoyed reading the mailing list. So I just actively avoid it, whether that's good or bad. That's the choice that I made. And I think it was a reasonable choice as somebody from an underrepresented group.
I have to agree. I often don't read the mailing list for weeks at a time. So.
Okay, let's move on with the next question. I saw Ned Daily posted a question.
I think it's already been answered, but if Guido wants to elaborate on it.
Oh, he said yes.
Okay. Who else?
Could I just make one more, getting back one last thing on the mailing list things.
Okay.
I think the venue is very important. And I think one thing we can do is, and especially since, people have said, like, for various reasons that they maybe don't pay that much attention to some mailing lists like Python Dev. As a release manager, I've tried to always keep mail focused on Python committers. Anything that I think core devs need to know about a release, I post it there, and I don't really care about the other mailing lists. And I think to the extent that there's stuff that really only affects other core developers, if we can use Python committers more than Python Dev. I'm not trying to censor discussion much, but I think that a lot of times we get really not very helpful people chiming in from outside of the core developer group that just really muddies the water. So.
Okay, I think the next question is from Guido.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened to my voice. So I'm desperately curious about the status of the BPO to GitHub migration, and how much is the steering council willing to share of what they know, and how much do you actually know?
Okay, I guess I muted first, so I get to take it. So Ezio has been hired to run that, thanks to donations from GitHub themselves. They were nice enough to help fund that. I don't know if PSF's chipping in as well. He just started, I believe, this month working on it. There is a work group, if you remember, that Ezio sent an email out about. For setting that up and going. He's working with that work group to make that happen, and I believe they started to meet this month, and so it's now actively being worked on. Otherwise, someone in the work group is probably in a better position to talk about what's been discussed so far. I'm purposely staying out of it.
Who is on the work group?
I am, for one, and we haven't started meeting yet. Really, I think the only thing that I know of that's happened is Ava's sent out noticed that, Ezio was hired and that's going to happen. But as far as the working group goes, as far as I know, nothing has happened yet. But just getting, so that's all I know at this point. In fact, I guess now I know who else is on. So yeah, Marietta, you're on, but I forget, are there any other core developers? I was a little bit concerned about that because, this is one of these things where, as far as the bug tracker and everything goes, we have, thousands and thousands of users of it, but actually, most of those people's use is very minor. They may use it once in a year or something like that. And really the key users are us, the core developers and the release managers. And then, I really, really would like to see more representation from core developers on the group. I think, that could be arranged if anyone's interested. I think most of the members on the group seem to be, were kind of volunteers from the wider community. And really, I didn't really recognize most of the names. So I really think, if you want this to succeed, you should consider stepping up and volunteering for this, because it's, it's going to affect all of us.
Would it be appropriate if I volunteered?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Oh
you should.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm game.
Yeah, it's appropriate
Great.
for anyone to join, honestly. I personally am staying out of it because I have moved our stuff over too many times. I want to stay out of it this time. But otherwise, I think, honestly, no one should feel that they can't or shouldn't. If you're interested, please join. And I should mention, this has been worked on off and on. I know it's been dragged out. Pandemic held stuff up, getting the funding lined up, and then Ezio had a lot of tax stuff he had to work through. So it's been a perpetual thing that I just want everyone to know the steering council has been working on it. It's just one of those things that just stuff, paperwork and stuff. It's just led to it taking this long.
Okay, thanks.
We spent about 2 hours speaking with Ezio and answering questions and getting different perspectives on things. And I think that was really useful. And I think he's going to be fantastic. So I feel really confident in how things are going to unfold moving forward. And, thinking not just about the technical aspects, but also, how to help people as the change happens with workflows and things like that, and having some education pieces as well is going to be helpful.
All right. I think I don't see any more questions. I know, Tal, you raised your hand, but that's been answered, right? Okay.
No, I do actually have a question.
Oh, you do have, sorry, I didn't. Okay. Go ahead.
I hope this is all right in this forum. I'm going to ask about just my own project, but just I decided by myself to take up this project to make contributing, especially for non-corporate developers, for new contributors, easier. A lot of you probably saw, hope I haven't been too vocal about that. And now I'm sort of doing this in the sprint, and quite a few of you have joined to work on that, and that's been really, really awesome. Just wanted to ask the steering council, if you feel should I be involving you in this in any way, and if so, how and when?
I don't think so specifically. I mean, if you feel you need to ask something of us, go for it. But I mean, you're basically creating an informal work group, and that's cool, and go for it. I trust you. I'm not worried. I trust anyone else who helps out. I trust. I mean, they're all here for a reason. So Yeah, no, I don't think you have to specifically flag anything up to us. If you need a question answered, we're happy to, but you can also obviously ask the room, and yeah.
I think you've been very transparent about what you've been doing and why you've been doing it. So yeah, I agree with Brett.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we see decisions from steering councils, be it technical or non-technical issues, that such and such PEP has been approved or not approved. And I also heard Barry saying that there is a lot of internal debate goes on and then opinions are shared, which is a very good thing. So do we ever get to kind of like see who was for or against a particular decision, or like, do you think is it a good idea to share, like we voted but it's a majority vote, or is it like usually a unanimous decision with any issue?
Generally, I would say no. We try to speak as one voice. Again, I think we largely get to a place where we all agree with. We may have different opinions about sort of the edges of things, and where that comes up. Individual steering council members are also Python community members. And so they're certainly free, and I've done this and other people have done this speaking on our own behalf. But when we speak on behalf of the steering council, I think we generally try to speak with one voice.
Yeah, I think we've had only one vote really where we were split, and that odd number actually came out to play. But as Barry said, we tried to speak as one voice, and that was the decision we made early on in the first steering council, that we wanted to come off as unified and as a single decision maker group, as it were. I don't think really breaking out the votes does anything except potentially help people's re-election campaigns, as it were. And we're not in this to get elected. So I don't really think it's going to be beneficial to tell everyone what Barry or Carol or I voted for and whether that aligns with what you want. Basically, if you are not happy with the way the steering council is doing stuff, you probably want to throw the whole steering council out, not just any of us individually. Hopefully everyone agree, the two of them agree with that statement, but I mean, honestly, that's my perspective is if you're happy with the way the steering council does, it's because we've done it as a group together. And if you're not happy with it, once again, it's because we did something you didn't like as a group together. And I just don't think breaking out the votes is really helpful.
So I would definitely want to give Carol a chance to respond, but I would just say that, like, I think that approach also really drives us as steering council members to come to an agreement, to really work hard at communicating something that we can all buy into. And if there's some particular, like when we craft a communication, there might be a particular phrase or wording that one or more of us has problems with, and we really work hard to come to an agreement that we can all really buy into. And I think that's really valuable.
I completely agree with Barry. I think by listening to each other and responding thoughtfully to each other, the communications we have sent, what has gone out has been far better than what the initial draft was. I think, with the PEPs, we've definitely been very intentional to look at it from many different angles, including like, how complex is this going to be to teach? How do we teach this to folks? Basically, I think, I'm happy. I can't really remember which votes were not unanimous. Most of them are. But yeah.
Yeah, and to really hone in on what Barry said about the communication, we really do make sure everything we say we all agree on. And we have had times where we've gone back and forth for quite a bit on a single email to just make sure everyone was willing to stand back behind it. Like, I will, if you ever pulled me aside and asked, did you agree with this, Brett? It's like, it's in an email, I did. It's just, it would not go out unless I agreed with it. Barry, Carol, Thomas, Victor, all of us. So it does definitely lead to some consensus building. That being said, I think in general, we typically rally around the same core ideas pretty quick. And it's really, as both Carol and Barry said, it's the edges that we kind of maybe don't completely align with necessarily, and we just kind of work towards something that works.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I don't know. I know a lot of people hasn't really, I think there are only a few questions, and I can see a lot of people didn't ask any questions or didn't say anything. Yeah, is there any more comments or questions? All right, then I guess that's it for now. I just want to say thanks to the steering council. I do think you all are doing a great job. I'm happy to see all of this, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, many thanks.
Thanks for all of you for all doing what you do. And thanks for moderating, Marietta.
Yeah, thanks, Marietta.
All right. Okay.
Good work, everybody.
Cool. Enjoy the rest of the sprints. Bye.